Nestled between a parking garage, a casino, and a restaurant-rich area in the heart of Detroit, Michigan, is Old St. Mary's Church. Old St. Mary's is the third oldest Roman Catholic church in Detroit and the first German church. It was first built on the present site in 1841 by a parish of German Catholic immigrants at a time when the total population of Detroit was not much over 5,000.
I have this long history with this parish, but when you ask people why do they come here, they frequently say, I just feel like I'm home here. So for me it makes sense I'm home here. It has been my family's home. But that's what many, many other people who are relatively new to the parish say. I walked in, I came in, I was on my way to Greektown.
When it's a downtown parish like that, we only come down normally on Sunday. And during the week we catch Mass at a neighborhood church that we also like.
You know, people come from all over the area for Mass. We don't have per se a neighborhood in the area. Although that's starting to change. More and more young people are moving downtown. And there are areas not terribly far from us that are starting to be repopulated again.
Not including labor, the original brick church cost a little over $239. The present church, replacing the earlier structure, was constructed in 1884 and styled in Victorian Gothic by Peter Dederichs. The cornerstone for the first church, built on the same site as the present one, was laid on the Feast of Corpus Christi, June 19, 1841.
We like the fact that the Holy Ghost Fathers have been here, and they've been a wonderful group. Before them, when the church was founded, it was like most churches in the Detroit area. This area was German. As the Germans were emigrating, this is kind of the area they were. The Polish were over by Hamtramck. The Irish were over off of Michigan Avenue in Corktown. And so the Germans built this church, and actually they built the original church, and then 50 years later the population was so big they built the current church.
My first ancestors that came here, my great-grandparents came here in the 1840s. So they had young children, and my great-grandmother, her name was Teresa Manquin, she and her siblings went to school there when it was a pretty new school. We're taught by the Sisters of Notre Dame, the School Sisters of Notre Dame.
Old St. Mary's is a church that has retained the original culture and many of the practices of the early church in Detroit.
You see the generational difference. The young people look around and they think it's nice looking and pretty, but then you get the questions from them, what's that gate up there? What's that rail across there? And then you have to explain what a communion rail is, which we still use at every single Mass. Then the young people see those 4 boxes, 2 on either side. What are those with the curtains? Well, those are confessionals. When you have the older groups, they get very nostalgic. Oh, I forgot about the days of, Masses like this, or communion railings, or you didn't tear up your pews.
Though much of the original church remains, one integral part of the celebrations is not the original.
It's a Wigton organ, and it's quite massive, and I have to tell you, I can't even tell you the number of pipes that are in it, and that was installed in the mid-'80s, and it was put in to take advantage of the architectural build of the church. So all the music comes from the choir loft. We don't have choirs on the floor. A lot of the modern churches, the choirs are right there next to or behind the priest. There are no pianos down there. There are no drums, no electronic music. There's the organ. And with the choir or just a cantor, everything's done from the choir loft.
Before the church gained the title Old, St. Mary's was known as the Church of the Grottoes.
We have 3 grottos, one to the Blessed Mother, That's the grotto that we're going to do some major repairs to. We have a grotto to the deceased Christ. That has been done and repaired, and we introduced a tomb, which wasn't there before. And then we have a baptismal grotto that's been completely renovated. It wasn't used for probably 50 years. So we were able to go back through the archives and find pictures, and we're able to repaint the whole grotto, and it looks exactly now like it did when it was first built. It's beautiful.
Old St. Mary's offers a mix of modern Mass celebrations and traditional Latin Masses.
We have a First Friday Tridentine Mass, the extraordinary form. Our altar rolls right off, and the sanctuary is in its form of when the church was built and how the Masses were celebrated. And so, again, that's drawing people back into the church.
The background was German, so you still have that element of parishioners with German. The Polish are nearby, and some of those have come here. The Italian church is right behind us. But those parishes only have one Mass on a Sunday. So if people come down here, St. Mary's is always an option for them if they don't come at the particular time a Mass is celebrated. We have a number of black Catholics. They mostly come, though, to the noon Mass. And that's an area that we could work on, I think, which is kind of a good mixture, you know, in the parish. They've kept many of what we would embrace as Catholic devotionals, very much so. And that's something else that attracts people. Kneeling at Holy Communion. We continue to use the paten, the communion rail. Good Latin music, excellent choir. We have confessions every day, at least for 40 minutes on weekdays. Sometimes not as long, about a half hour on weekends, but we have it before every Mass. And many times even after Mass, if the line is too long, and then we would resume hearing confessions after Mass too.
Greektown was always a extra place to go all throughout all these years. Mostly Greek restaurants, and then we got a Greek church at the other end of the block. And but now they've got 3 casinos down here, and so especially one across the street. I mean everything. And then they built this hotel right next to the church here. So, like when we used to, after Mass, we would go across the street to the school. We'd have a gathering of the people, coffee and donuts, and then this used to be a convent here, not this building, but in this same spot.
For Old St. Mary's, the core of the church is the people who come here.
We started here in '78 when we had been checking different parishes, and we just kept coming back to St. Mary's, and so we kind of just molded right in and enjoyed all the priests. And when we started here, there were 5 priests, and so you got to know each one of them, and you felt real close to them.
Thought I would just be here for a month. I was only supposed to fill in. And then through a divine intervention, I was able to stay. Looked like it would be maybe just a longer temporary stay, but it turned out now that it's 4 years. It was a blessing. It was a gift. It's a wonderful parish.
I was born in Port-au-Prince, no, in Saint-Marc, Haiti. I went to medical school in France, and then I came here after that. When I came here, I got some priest some Holy Ghost priest who was practicing in the hospital where I was practicing. And they introduced me to St. Mary's. And I've been coming to St. Mary's at least 60 years.
And our kids have good relationships with the other children, and so that's another draw that we can come down, and we're here for Mass, and we might stay for an hour or 2 hours after Mass on Sunday, and Joseph gets to play around for quite a bit before we start heading back. So,
as you know, this is a downtown parish, so this is the parish of my ancestors. My ancestors came here from Alsace, Lorraine in France, and they came around the late 1840s to Detroit. So this parish has been my family's parish ever since then. And they lived around the area, and as a matter of fact, my grandparents lived on St. Antoine, which is just down the street from the parish. It was my grandmother's home when she married my grandfather. We've had 5 successive generations of my family marry at this church. So my great-grandparents were married here in the original church building in 1865, and then my grandparents were married in this church in 1895, my parents in 1945, my husband and I in 1979, and then my son was married here in 2014. So my great-grandparents were married in the previous church, but it's the same altar.
We came here one Sunday. Even though I had been here many years ago, we came into Mass, the 10 o'clock Novus Ordo Latin, and decided at the end of that Mass, we think we found our parish. And so about 1986 is when we joined the parish. And even though we moved from Detroit, we moved to a close-lying suburb of Dearborn, which is 12 minutes away from Old St. Mary's. We still come here every Sunday. We have a very dedicated base of parishioners, very dedicated group that want to see this church stay open for the reason that it's here, so you can go to Mass. Not be a museum particularly, although it's quite beautiful and people love coming in and oohing and eyeing. But when we see those Sundays getting full and those weekdays staying full, then we think Father's doing his job quite well and keeping people coming here for the purpose it was intended.
Since 1893, the Holy Ghost Fathers, the Spiritans, have faithfully served Old St. Mary's Church. Soon the parish will celebrate 125 years of Spiritan service at Old St. Mary's. Other anniversaries like that have been celebrated with artworks related to the international mission of evangelization of the congregation. The Spiritan Fathers continue in the Detroit area by making themselves advocates, supporters, and defenders of the weak.
We have a $3 a month program. So you donate $3 a month, and then all those funds are sent for the help, the maintenance, building up the church in Tanzania. And the Holy Ghost Fathers have a long history there, so even though the particular parish we support does not have a Holy Ghost Father there, it's still very much appreciated by them. So hopefully one of the days their new priest will come visit.
So I did not know much about the Spiritans before coming to Old St. Mary's. Spiritans seem to be, from what I have experienced here at Old St. Mary's, very good shepherds of their people. Father Ed and Father Epperly both seemed very personable, and they wanted to get to know their parishioners, so that struck a chord with me.
I would say this about the Spiritans, and it's hard to compare with other orders because I don't know, but they're easy to do with that. They're kind of an easy group of people to get to know and to feel at ease with, to feel comfortable with. So if that's certainly a characteristic, it's certainly been a characteristic of the people I have met, irrespective of whether they came from East Africa or West Africa or New Jersey or Utah or wherever.
I think the Spiritans have been, as they're missionaries, but so they were missionaries when they came to Detroit, and now they're missionaries coming from other countries to Detroit again. And so I think that spirit, if you will, of just holiness and a dedication to provide the Catholic faith to people is what's the inspiration. And that's what they are. Father Epperly has just been such a holy presence here, and I think they really understand what people need in their lives from a sense of Catholicism and a true faith.
The Spiritans, they are the best. They are the best, I'm telling you. Most of everything I know in life and in medicine, I learned from the Spiritan. They teach you to be a good Christian, to be a good person, to be a good physician, and to practice a good life, and to practice a Christian life.
When you ask people why do they come here, they frequently say, I just feel like I'm home here. So for me, it makes sense I'm home here. It has been my family's home. But that's what many, many other people who are relatively new to the parish say. I walked in, I came in, I was on my way to Greektown. I had seen this church, I never came in, I wanted to come in, and I came, and I just stayed because I felt like I was home.